Pull up, grab the fuel nozzle, and get ready to fuel up on trends and strategies to grow your travel center business in this episode of The Truck Stops Here, brought to you by NATSO. Now, here's your host, Amy Toner.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Truck Stops Here. I'm your host, Amy Toner. You are listening to The Truck Stops Here, the NATSO Foundation's podcast. The NATSO Foundation is the research, education, and public outreach subsidiary of NATSO, and the podcast is just one of the many educational tools that the foundation creates. Today, I'm so lucky I have Miss Christine Chesler with me. She's NATSO's COO. Hi, Christine.
Hi, Amy. You're lucky to have me. That's so flattering.
We're going to talk about... No pressure. Always no pressure. We're going to talk about this new study and toolkit that we've been working on seemingly forever, but it's coming out soon. We pulled some data from the NATSO Services, which is another subsidiary of NATSO, and we put it into a toolkit through the foundation so that our non-members could have information that they need to run their business. So can you tell me about it? This is the second year we've done it. Why are we doing the survey?
In a nutshell, because the members needed the information and were asking us for it. So last year, 2022, we were getting a lot of questions from the members about why are drivers stopping where they are? What amenities do they need? And it was so interesting to us because the data really isn't out there in one place for the professional driver. And for a lot of travel center operators, it's just like air, right? Or it's like a fish in water. You know it because you've been living it for however long. But the truck driver's reality is changing. And when that changes, the amenities they need, right? Those change too.
Yeah. And there's one thing we talked about when we were putting it together is there's a lot of different driver surveys out there, but there isn't that lens that we add, which is what it means for our members for truck stops.
For sure. And I think one of the other things we can do is marry it up. I think most people listening to this call probably know Darren Schulte on our team. If you're a travel center operator, he's our boots on the ground guy, right? So his boots have been on the ground at your travel center. And there's a lot of insight there. And what we found that we can do with this survey is marry up the data, what the customer is actually saying that they want, with what Darren observes when he's out there. And then just to be extra fun, we sent one of our staff members, Andrew Evans, out with a camera to interview drivers to get a little more insight on what some of these answers mean. So I think it's very rich, and it's a little bit unique because it does take advantage of that. Data's like the surveys, the statisticians say, no one lives at average, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So this helps us understand where the unique pieces of information are.
Before we just dive into all the sections of the survey, can you tell us what you think was the most interesting thing that came out of the survey?
For sure. To me, the most exciting finding is that opportunity exists. Right. And I think that there's a lot of new competition in the industry. There's new players. There's a lot of new dynamics. There's that pressure for speed. And a lot of operators are looking around and saying, I've got to grow wallet share. Right. As fuel efficiency standards come in, our operators are trying to find new ways to add value to the driver, to create reasons for people to stop professional drivers. And the survey really points us to where that opportunity is. And one of the statistics just jumps off the page. 81% of pro drivers surveyed had gone inside the travel center store, right? They had made it all the way in the store, but they left without purchasing food or beverage in the prior 30 days. I would just sit with that for a second, because that is opportunity. If you convert just some of those into a soda purchase or into a cup of coffee, that's growing wallet share, and that's adding directly to your bottom line. So to me, the challenge is to figure out why conversion isn't happening and then tackle those elements.
One of the data points in the survey that I found interesting was about the reason why they stop. So determining where they the biggest factor was cleanliness of the showers and restrooms, which was not by a small amount. It was like, what was it, 57%?
Yeah.
It was huge. So I know, to me, that was interesting because I know so much of our members think about other things besides cleanliness. I know we have a few members in that area that you've worked with.
Sure. And I think that was a really interesting piece for me. And I think a lot of our members, we've known about cleanliness for a long time, right? Like Sap Brothers and their mom approved restrooms. Yeah. So, and there's, it's such a part of the business culture for so many travel centers. We've certainly have some supplier partners who've been big in that space, Apter Industries, for example. I think when you're thinking about cleanliness, I would expand your thinking beyond cleaning products and cleaning tools, especially now when labor is so tight. Think about your supplier partners who can help you redeploy labor. If you have digital menu boards or digital shelf labels, can you redeploy staff from updating those to keeping a really clean, immaculate property and inside your store? So just expand the thinking there on how to free up staff to keep everything looking sharp and sparkling and beautiful. One other thing on this point, I think, Amy, I love goofy movies. And Talladega Nights just jumps out at me. And if you remember that when Will Ferrell runs around the whole movie saying, if you're not first, you're last. I think surveyors must love that survey, because this is one of those questions where the first finding was cleanliness. But to me, the story is in the second finding, right? The second driver was loyalty. And a couple of the travel centers I've spoke to were really surprised by that. Like, they knew loyalty was important, but it was in second place as a factor that would drive people or influence their decision to make non-fuel purchases by a big margin. And I think that's really something to look at.
What was it? More than half of drivers, 55%, said loyalty programs influence their decisions.
Absolutely. And we sent, like I mentioned before, we sent Andrew Evans out to interview drivers, and, stop by our website or our YouTube channel for some of those pieces, because the passion which they speak about the loyalty programs really just jumps out of those interviews. And it makes sense, right? If you're an independent driver, then you are looking for ways to save every dollar while you're on the road. And those loyalty programs make that difference. And if you're a fleet driver, then points that you may be gaining while on the road may help you with your family or with your private purchases when you're not on the job. So it makes sense that that's a big program. But I was still surprised at how highly that scored.
What about the importance of speed? Let's see. The survey found that delays at checking out really impacted purchasing. I thought this was interesting. So it said 10% would leave even if they're just two people online, which I feel like that seems like just a small, tiny number to me. And the majority of drivers, 58%, said they would only wait in line for 1 to 5 minutes. I found this to be so interesting.
I thought that was interesting as well. And I think if we step back and look at it, if I'm a driver who's on the road and I'm on my 30-minute break, right, and I'm going in to get food, I'm not going beyond that 30-minute break. If I was stuck in detention and I'm late and I've got to make up time and I see 10 people at the QSR, that probably is pretty daunting, especially if I had a delay outside trying to fuel up, if it wasn't as quick as I wanted it to be. So I do have a lot of respect for that. And I suspect the answer there might be different if you're on your overnight break versus your 30-minute break. Or if you're an over-the-road versus a short-haul driver. Go ahead, Amy.
Totally. Oh, I was just going to say one thing that Dale Elks with Oasis Travel Center was telling us about last week at Ambest, that they have a QR code on their pumps so that drivers can order food ahead of time, and then it'll be ready by the time they got in, which is like one of those things where you're like, it's so tiny, but it's so important. I thought that was so smart, especially because he was saying how they want those like specialty homemade things to, like, they still want the nice food, right? They don't just want the quick food, but they could order it from the pump, which I thought was so smart. And it tells them which pump they are, which I thought that was
interesting. I think that's brilliant. Do they bring the food out to them, or it's just expedites them coming inside?
They come inside, but it can be like made to order while they're pumping.
Yeah, I think that's genius. And I think that's exactly the kind of solution that the pro driver who's so time strapped needs. And, our survey only looked at professional drivers, but you think too, your forecourt customer, right? Depending on what they're doing, if they're a parent in the car with 3 kids, they may want to just come in and grab and get back on the road as well. So that's interesting. But talking about speed, one of the other things that really came out in the survey, so one of our questions asked folks, what's more important to you, speed and personal service, just personal service, or just speed? And, I think not surprisingly, the people wanted the combination was the highest point. But again, in that sort of, it's interesting to me what comes in second. Over a quarter of the people, given the choice between speed and personal, still just picked speed. And I find that so fascinating. And I think one of the things we hear a lot, especially from your over-the-road driver, that they want that personal service. They've been driving for a long time. They get in the store. They don't want to do self-checkout, that they want that personal connection. But that fact that at least a quarter of them are like, no, given the choice of the two, I'm still going for speed, I think is something to really look at. And when you're considering self-checkout, again, with the numbers you pointed out, Amy, 10% will leave if there's just 2 people in line.
2 people. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we find a way to provide that personal experience and self-checkout. It doesn't have to be either or.
Just like Dale's solution. Absolutely. You want to talk about food?
Sure. Let's talk about food.
Okay. 36% of fueling customers said they go inside for reliable food from a national brand. 21% they'd go inside for out of the ordinary food offerings. Let's see, what else? Among respondents, 33% of respondents said they were more attracted to a specific travel center if they had a full service family restaurant. But, on the flip side, that leaves the 67% who are looking for the fast, quick, fresh, hot. I know you like talking about food.
I do.
What do you think about all that?
I think know your customer. And I think know your customer today, right? The same reason we're going to do this. We did this survey last year. We're doing it today. The driver's needs change. So keep checking in with your customer. If your customer base has a lot of over-the-road drivers, they may be more inclined toward that family-style restaurant than if you're, maybe you're outside a port or you have a lot of folks who are really just doing day trips and then staying home. So know your customer when you're making that decision about what type of restaurant to put in. And I think food, we're seeing a lot of changes, right, in the industry as we see new players come into the industry. And as we're seeing that need for speed that we talked about, pick up, grab and go, is picking up. That's an important option. And I think our travel centers are looking at that too. And to me, this sort of underscores this sense that there is opportunity out there and that our members see it. We did a really quick poll, 4 weeks ago of our travel centers. And it was just a small poll. I think we heard back from about 34, 35 operators, but 45% of them said that they'll be investing in a new QSR or other food franchise in the next 12 to 18 months. That is a really big number to me. So I think that shows that the industry is meeting the trucking customers' changing needs and their need for different types of food than they might have needed 10 years ago.
This seems like a good time to talk about NATSO Connect. You have a lot of vendors in these areas coming, right?
We do. I think one of the focal areas we're going to look at NATSO Connect in February is growing wallet share. So there'll be a focus one day on your fuel customer, but how do you translate that customer into additional sales, whether it's inside in your restaurant or in your store? But food is obviously critical. And I think, just look at any of the trade magazines. Everybody is looking at their food program and their food offering. So it's a pretty important place to be competitive and make sure that you're relevant to your customer and differentiated. Okay.
And that's February 18th to the 22nd in Orlando, right?
That's right.
That's right. And we're going to have a workshop on growing wallet share too, a whole day dedicated to it. So I think we'll have a lot of stuff that comes out of this survey. Absolutely. Right. Did we get it all, Christine?
I think we did. Other than I think ending on that note of optimism is so important. There are opportunities to grow wallet share. There are drivers coming onto the property who represent an opportunity to increase sales, to meet their needs too, right? It's not just about the dollars, but about really serving that truck driver, that professional driver who's out there on the road, away from their family and needing services. And that's what our members provide.
I'm going to put a link to your LinkedIn profile with this so people can reach out to you if they have ideas for next year's survey.
Oh, that would be great. We want to make sure that it's relevant and that it really responds to what our members are looking at and the decisions they need to make.
It makes my job easier when you pull together all this great survey stuff. All right. Well, thank you, Christine. And thanks to everyone for listening to today's episode of The Truck Stops Here. You can find us online at natso.com/podcast. If you have any questions, if you want a survey, questions for next year, reach out to us at editor@natso.com. All right. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you, Amy.
The Truck Stops Here was brought to you by NATSO, the association representing truck stops and travel centers. Visit natso.com for more information. The Truck Stops Here is produced by NATSO in collaboration with Human Factor. Producers are Amy Toner and Darren Schulte.